This week we're going to be solving quadratic equations. Now, most of the skills that you need to be able to solve a quadratic equation we've already learnt. There's just one small extra skill bolted on. So here's my first quadratic equation, and this is sort of like the must. I've done 3 examples, a must and a should and a could. So this is a sort of must task for this week. I've got a quadratic equation. The first thing I need to do when I have a quadratic equation is make sure I've got all of the terms on one side and 0 on another side. And if you look in this question, that's already happened for me. I've got an x squared and a 2x and a minus 15 on this side and 0 on another side. I have to have all the terms on one side and 0 on the other side. Now I can't solve these like linear equations. I can't make them x equals because I've got an x squared and an x. They won't become x equals. So I have to use another skill that we learned not too long ago and went over, which is factorising. I have to factorise this equation. So I have to put that left hand side in brackets. When I've got an x squared and an x and a number, I know it's going to be double brackets. Okay, now remember, the number on the end is always your first port of call. I know that I'm going to have an x here and an x here because it's an x squared, but I know that this number here and this number here have to multiply to make minus 15. If they're multiplying to make a negative, then it has to be a plus and a minus. The only way you can multiply to make a negative is with a plus and a minus. Okay, and I know it has to multiply to make minus 15, so it's going to have to be either 1 and 15 or 3 and 5. They're the only factor pairs of 15. Okay, now some of you would be happy and probably be able to work these out in your head straight away. Others of you that are less confident might need to try some. Okay, so for example, I think it might be 3 and 5, so I'm going to try over here. I'm going to try, let's say, I think it's going to be x plus 3, x minus 5. I'm going to expand that out to see if it gives me my expression that I wanted. So first 2, x times x is x squared. Outside 2, x times minus 5 is minus 5x. Inside 2, 3 times x is plus 3x. And last 2, 3 times minus 5 is minus 15. And that gives me x squared minus 2x minus 15. Whereas I wanted x squared plus 2x minus 15. So it nearly gave me what I wanted, but it didn't quite work. I think because I've got that 2 though, I think if I try x plus 5, x minus 3 and expand it, that should work, but let's have a look. First 2, x times x is x squared. Outside 2, x times minus 3 is minus 3x. Inside 2, 5 times x is plus 5x. Last 2, 5 times minus 3 is minus 15. If I collect those together, it gives me x squared minus 3x plus 5x is plus 2x minus 15. And if I look, x squared plus 2x minus 15. So that's what I wanted, okay? Some of you, like I said, that are more confident will be able to do the factorising part, which really is the main part of this, is the factorising part. We'll be able to do those quite quickly, and we'll get on more to the should and the could. If you're not so confident with the factorising, that's going to be the main thing you're going to be going over this week. I now have 2 things that are multiplying together to equal 0. I've got this bracket here multiplied by this bracket here equals 0. Now, whenever I have 2 things multiplying together to equal 0, one of them has to be 0. If you try and think of any pair of numbers that multiply together to make 0, one of them is always 0. So if this bracket here is being multiplied by this bracket here to equal 0, either this bracket has to be 0 or this bracket has to be 0. Otherwise, they can't multiply together to equal 0. So if this bracket were to be 0, the bracket x plus 5 were to be equal to 0, then x would have to equal minus 5. That would make that bracket there equal 0. But it could be that this bracket here would equal 0. And if this bracket here were to equal 0, x minus 3 would equal 0, then x would have to equal 3. Because 3 minus 3 would give me 0, just the same as minus 5 plus 5 would give me 0. So there are actually two solutions to this equation. X equals minus 5 and x equals 3. It doesn't really matter how you write them. I've written them with a comma. Some people would write x equals minus 5, x equals 3. Doesn't matter too much, but there are two solutions to a quadratic equation, and I can check it. If I put in minus 5 squared is 25, plus 2 lots of minus 5, that's minus 10, minus 15. 25 minus 10 minus 15 equals 0. If I try it with 3 squared is 9, plus 2 lots of 3, well that's 6, minus 15. So I've got 9 plus 6 minus 15 equals 0. So a quadratic equation should have two solutions. That's the main type of equation. So those key steps are, you make sure you've got all the terms on one side and 0 on the other side, which you will, for those easier ones you will have. You factorize it, and then you find the x bracket, the x values that makes the brackets worth 0. Minus 5 makes this bracket worth 0, and 3 makes this bracket worth 0. So that's the two solutions. Go on to a sort of should type one. You have to just ignore this left-hand side, which is what we did a second ago. Okay, on this one, at the moment, I don't have all the terms on one side and 0 on the other side. Now in theory, I can move all the terms onto whichever side I want, but really I want the x squared to be positive. So I'm going to move this onto that side. I'm going to do that by minusing 12x from both sides. If I minus 12x from both sides, the left side is going to be x squared minus 12x, and the right hand side is going to be 0. Now I've got what I wanted. I've got all my terms on one side and 0 on the other side. Slightly strange one. This doesn't come up too much, but it can come up. It's not actually going to be a double brackets one, because for a double brackets one, I need the x squared and the number. This isn't going to be a double brackets one. They've both got a factor of x. So to factorize it, I can just make it x bracket x minus 12, because x goes into both bits. So I've now factorized it, and then I need to do the same thing as before. Either this has to be 0, well if that's 0 then that just means x is 0, or this bracket has to be 0. For this bracket to be 0, x would have to equal 12. And that's my two solutions. Okay, again, usually you'd have to factorize with double brackets, but occasionally you might not need to have double brackets. But the key tip with this one is that at the start of my equation, I didn't have all the terms on one side and 0 on the other. So I took something away, or added something on, but in this case took something away to make it so that I had all the terms on one side and 0 on the other. The last one I'm going to show you is a bit of a could one. If you're still struggling with the must ones, you don't need to worry about these too much, and you can bin off this video here. But for those of you that have done those must ones, here's a bit of a could one for you. Okay, again, I don't have all my terms on one side, so I'm going to have to rearrange it. This time to rearrange it, I'm going to have to add 15 to both sides, and that's going to give me 2x squared minus 11x plus 15 equals 0. Now I need to factorize it. It's going to be another double brackets one. I've got 2x squared here, so it's going to have to be 2x and x. It's multiplying to make a positive. If it's multiplying to make a positive, it could be a plus and a plus, or it could be a minus and a minus. However, when I collect up those x's, I have minus 11x. So it can't be positive and positive, because I wouldn't end up with minus 11x. So it's going to have to be a minus and a minus. Multiplying to make 15 again, so it's going to have to be 1 and 15, or 3 and 5, just like on the other one. Again, for tricky ones like this, probably most of you guys would have to try a factor pair and plug it in, or maybe not for this one, but a lot of these ones, okay? I actually know that for this one, it's going to be -3 there and -5 there. Okay, but please bear in mind, I'm not going to go through those steps to save time, but you may have to do that. You may have to try plugging them in. And it's really important to note on this one that 5 and 3 would be different to 3 and 5 because you've got a 2x here and an x here. Okay, then I need to make either this bracket 0 or this bracket 0. To make this bracket 0, I'm going to start with the easier one. X would have to equal 3, because 3 minus 3 would be 0. To make this bracket 0, if 2x minus 5 is 0, then 2x would have to be 5, so x would have to be 2.5. And that would be my two solutions to that one. That's the could type of equation.